Hey, it's Mr. Redstone, and in this video we are going to be graphing some lines that take the form y equals mx plus b. Now eventually I'm going to show you a few shortcuts with this, but I'm going to take you on the ride where we discover what that shortcut is. To start, 2x minus 4 is y. What we're going to do to graph this is choose some values for x, substitute it in, and see what y would equal. So if x is negative 1, I substitute that in, y is equal to negative 6. If x is 0, y will end up being negative 4. If x is 3, y ends up being 2. So I've got 4 points. If I do everything right, all 4 of these points should fall on a nice straight line. So if I plot them, negative 1, negative 6, 0, negative 4, 2, 0, and 3, 2. And as you can see, everything falls on a nice straight line. I can connect my dots. That is the line y equals 2x minus 4. Let's do another example. Students usually get scared at this point because they see a fraction, but I pick nice numbers. So 2/3 of negative 6 would be negative 4, plus 1 is negative 3. 2/3 of negative 3 would be negative 2, plus 1 more is negative 1. 2/3 of 0 plus 1 is 1. And 2/3 of 6 plus 1 is 5. So again, I've got 4 points. If I did everything right, all 4 of these points should fall on a nice straight line. I've got negative 6, negative 3, negative 3, negative 1, 0, 1, and 6, 5. And voila, we have a nice straight line. It tells me that I've done everything right. So now let's discover a bit of a shortcut so we don't always have to use a table of values. And I think that's why you're here, right? So we're going to go back up. And we're going to look at 2 quantities we talked about in a previous video with patterns, rates of change, and the 0 term or the y-intercept. So looking at the table, as x increased by 1, y increased by 2. That means my rate of change is 2 over 1. Or every time x increases by 1, y increases by 2. And you can see that on your graph. I go right 1, I move up 2. It doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. That's the ratio. X goes up by 1, y goes up by 2. Now the other thing I'd like you to look at is the 0 term, or when x is equal to 0. Y is going to equal negative 4. If you remember, we called that the y-intercept. And now what I'd like you to do is look at your equation. That rate of change of 2, that's the number in front of x. The place where your line cut through the y-axis, that's negative 4. Same thing with the second example. If we wanted to look at the rate of change, if x increased by 6, y increased by 4. That means your rate of change would equal 4/6, or 2/3. And you can see that on your graph. Every time x goes to the right 3, y is going up 2. Doesn't matter which 2 points you pick, you'll always see that ratio of right 3 up 2. And that's the number, again, in front of x. Where it crosses the y-axis, the 0 term or the y-intercept, it's right there at the end. It's the constant plus 1. So if we know how to identify those 2 quantities and we know what they mean, we can graph these without using a table of values. And that's summarized here. As you've now discovered, a linear function can take the form y equals mx plus b. M represents your slope or your rate of change. It's the number in front of x. And b represents the y-intercept, or where it crosses the y-axis, and it's going to be your constant. You can pick those off if you have y equals. So in this first example, I've got y equals 3x minus 4. So if I want to graph this using the shortcut, we quickly pick off the y-intercept. In this case, it would be -4. So I can plot that. I know it crosses the y-axis at -4. The second piece of information we need is the slope, the number in front of x. It's 3, or 3 over 1. This means every time x goes up by 1, y is going up by 3. So from that y-intercept, we go right 1, up 3. And I can do that a couple more times to get a nice, accurate line. And you see, we connect our points, and we get the line y equals 3x minus 4. And that's the same line you would get if you were to choose random values for x and complete a table of values. The next one, y equals -1/5 x subtract 2. Again, we pick off the y-intercept of -2, and we can plot that point. Next, we look at the slope, -1/5. That means every time x goes up by 5, y is going down by 1. So from our y-intercept, we moved right 5, down 1. Or I could have went backwards and said, every time x decreases by 5, y goes up by 1. And I've got a mosquito in front of me, and I missed him. There you go. There's our line. Y equals -1/5 x subtract 2. So graphing these things, if you've got y equals mx plus b is easy. But what if it's not in that form? I'm going to show you how to get there. So we're going to graph 2x plus 3y is 6. And to do that, I'm going to put a simpler equation beside it. Instead of 2x plus 3y is 6, what if we just had 2 plus 3y is 6? This is a two-step equation like you would have seen in 6th and 7th grade. We'd start by subtracting 2 from each side, and then we would isolate y by dividing by 3. Now this question that I gave you is no different. 2x plus 3y is 6. Instead of subtracting 2, I'm going to subtract 2x. And as long as I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. Now since the right-hand side aren't like terms, I can't combine them. I have to leave it as -2x plus 6. To get y by itself now, I divide everything by 3, just like I did on the right. And so what I have now is a line that looks like the form that we talked about in the previous few examples. 6 divided by 3 is 2, so there's your y-intercept. Your slope says every time x goes up by 3, y is going down by 2. We connect our points, and that is the line 2x plus 3y is 6. Now we'll do one more. We want to get y by itself, so we've got to get rid of the 5x. So we subtract 5x from each side. -2y, well, we can't simplify the right-hand side, so we leave it as a -5x and a +8. I want to get y by itself. To undo multiplication, I divide by -2. Y is going to equal 5/2 x because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 8 divided by -2 is -4. We begin by plotting the y-intercept of -4. And then we use the idea of a slope of 5/2. Every time x goes up by 2, y is going up by 5. We connect our points, and that is the line 5x minus 2y is 8. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.